Welcome to the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast, where we take a metabolic approach to help guide you on preventing, prevailing, and striving over cancer.
We are live on the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jeff Lopes. I got my incredible co-host, Keith Bishop. How are you, sir?
Hi there. Wonderful. And you?
Amazing. It's been a little break. We're still trying to come up with our pre-recorded podcast, but it's been a little break on our recording for the summer break. I was away, and then life and things got a little busy, so it was fun and exciting to finally get back to it and start hopefully getting back on a weekly basis with our podcast for all the audience that's craving for them. So excited to be back, buddy. How are you? Everything good with you?
Everything's going great. Yes. And we've had a fun 30 minutes just catching up. So it's been fun, finding out what's going on in our lives. So it's been great.
So today's topic is one I've seen Keith do posts on in the last couple of weeks, and it's something that kind of sparked my interest because it's something I've added to my diet, and it's cheese. And we're going to talk about different forms of cheese, the positive, the negative, and I'm going to question Keith on some of this stuff. He's going to say, I'm sure he's going to question some of the stuff I'm going to say. Growing up, I couldn't stand cheese. I could not eat cheese. The only cheese I would eat was on pizza. That was the only time I would touch cheese. When I found out I had cancer and I started looking into more of a keto Mediterranean diet, I tried to find alternative healthy cheese, not a processed cheese, but healthy alternative cheese. And somehow I got connected to a local Portuguese bakery that imports this fresh cheese. And it's just water-based cheese, all natural, all organic. And once you open it, you got to eat it within 2 or 3 days. And I use that as part of my keto Mediterranean diet. And I take a chunk of it and I'll put it on a plate with whatever I'm eating, whether it's vegetables or whatever. And I use that sometimes as a protein source. And I've kind of learned to love it. I actually really enjoy it now, the taste of it, the texture of it. And it has become part of my diet. And is, like I said, it's a big chunk of my protein intake, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. It's not every day, but I would say 2 to 3 times a week is my protein intake. When I saw Keith posting about Swiss cheese and feta cheese in the last couple posts, I decided to talk to him and say, let's talk about this. So let's talk about the positive aspect of cheese and what are the benefits towards cancer. And then you had some questions when it comes to prostate and breast cancer that could highlight a potential risk in intake if you overdo it. So let's talk about the positive things, and then we'll kind of dive into that so we get both worlds. And then I'm going to question a few things you're going to say, I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So matter of fact, actually, when I was 18 years old, I was in a band and we went to Europe for a 2-week concert tour. And that's when I had cheese, like real cheese.
Yeah.
And it just kind of woke me up. I had worked at a pizza joint, at 16 years old, and that's how I helped pay for that trip going to Europe. But then going to the little shop, buying the cheese and the bread and a little wine, and sitting on the city square and eating that, and just visiting and relaxing and watching people. But that cheese was so different from what we have here in Oklahoma. I mean, that it was just like totally different. And that kind of sparked my interest in cheese. And so, and I don't even know what type it was. It was a white cheese, more similar to probably like a Swiss type cheese. It was a hard cheese. Yeah. But that was great. And I still gravitate toward that type. And, if I'm going to have something like that, a Parmesan or a Swiss, or, something more of a firmer type cheese, and not sweet. I mean, definitely not sweet, more bitter type of an item on that. So there's a lot of benefits to it, actually.
Okay. Let's talk about that. I mean, and it does fit in perfectly into, and it's something you haven't added to your protocol yet, but you're saying, but it does fit perfectly into the keto mindset, right? So let's talk about that.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's being fermented. That fermentation, that means adding, bacteria, molds, and things like that to the cheese. That those organisms actually digest and eat and use up the lactose and carbohydrates, the lactose and galactose type carbohydrates that are definitely a concern that would take that product off. So like dairy milk, is not a ketogenic type item because of the sugar that's in that milk.
Yes.
But cheese, when it's fermented and becomes thicker, because the bacteria is actually grown and in that process thickens it up, but it eats away at those sugars. So when you look at the carbohydrate load, it's low. So definitely most cheeses fall into this ketogenic type thing. And I'm going to add it to, for those of you that have already downloaded the guide, this is version 1.7. So I keep modifying it. Once you download it, it's going to be in your library on my website. So you don't have to go through the whole process again, which is actually very simple. It's a free download, but it's in your login. You go to the website, log in, and there it is. All your downloads are already there, and it will be updated. But I'm adding it in because actually there's many benefits to it. You mentioned the protein, the bacteria. There is some live bacteria, like the cheese that you have, that fresh cheese that I'm not familiar with. I'll have to check that out, but it's, it has bacteria and things in it. And no preservatives. And so it has a tendency to break down faster. But that bacteria goes into the gut and populates the gut.
Let's talk about that. Where are the comparisons when you're talking about an organic, pretty much low to zero sugar yogurt or when you're getting the actual probiotic aspect of it compared to a cheese like that, I'm eating like a fresh cheese. Where do they stand next to each other when it comes to the gut health probiotic aspect of it?
Well, so a good cheese might be better than the average yogurt. So the average yogurt is
full of sugar.
Yeah. They use Thermophilus is the name of the bacteria, and it's not going to multiply and fulfill the gut. Now, there actually is a yogurt that you can make at home. And matter of fact, there's a neat book. It's called Super Gut by Dr. William Davis.
Yeah.
And you buy a culture and you make your own yogurt. It is not sweet. It's bitter. And there's several different versions and different cultures that you can use to make that. That would be a wonderful option. And, and by using that, it's going to have the kind of bacteria that's going to populate, inside the gut. The, Thermophilus from what most yogurts are made from are not all that great. I'm also a little concerned about the plastics that are used, and they put that hot yogurt into a plastic container, and then we have the microplastics and nanoplastics leaching into that. There's actually some lawsuits that are starting to come out because of that, and so anyway, so the super gut type thing I love for yogurts, but cheeses, especially if it's more like an organic one, most of the ones I have to admit you probably would need to go to a health food store or getting an organic type. I think there's better ones than others, of course, with that. But getting a pre-graded Mexican blend cheese here, at the discount store is not what we're talking about. Okay, so it needs to be more of a firm cheese and one that has, basically kind of like you mentioned, a short shelf life.
Yeah.
And so that means it's got the live bacteria in it. Matter of fact, the live bacteria, but it's very interesting. There's like in some cheeses, like in Swiss, there's actually another chemical. Oh, great. What was it called? Called ricin, not the bad chemical, but renin, not rennet, but there's begins with an R that actually is a preservative that naturally forms in the cheese, that it keeps for quite some time, that the bacteria makes. And it has anti-cancer benefits.
It's funny because with the fresh cheese I buy, like I said, it comes in a container and it's already covered in water. But as soon as you open it, within a day or two, the water starts absorbing. So I top it up with filtered water to preserve it. And I keep it obviously refrigerated, but every time I open it up and I'll take some, I'll fill it up. I'll top it up with filtered water and then put it back in the fridge, and that helps preserve it because it's like absorbing all the water out of it as it starts as the days pass if it's been open, which is very interesting.
Yes, I love the process of just how they make cheese. So we shared how I like to watch TV shows and like you mentioned YouTube, but shows that where they show you how they do things, and especially in European countries and how they in Mediterranean countries all the way down south, how they take those cultures and the cheeses. And matter of fact, actually cow cheese, I'm not as much of a fan of cow cheese as I am more like sheep and goat cheeses are my favorite. And,
interesting.
And they're overall
they're probably healthier. Yeah, but is that your favorite for the taste profile, or actually the health profile?
No, just more health profile and just thinking about way things used to be. So rather than the dairy farm that is 8 miles away from me, which is gigantic, actually extremely large dairy farm, and they're making yogurt and cheeses and stuff at this dairy farm. And I know what they do to those cows.
Yeah.
I know what they eat. I see what they feed them.
Yeah.
I see the crop dusters and all that stuff going on. And it just turns me off, versus, more of an organic form, with limited chemicals. And even though this farm has changed to what they call A2 cows, trying to present themselves as being a healthier option, but they haven't changed anything else that they do.
Yeah.
To those cows. And so therefore I'm just not a fan of most American, especially dairy or cow cheeses.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be some good ones, definitely.
There's a handful of really, I think one's called Oak Pastures. There's a whole bunch of regenerated farms right now that are it's almost becoming a trend in the US, and they're slowly, but it's for these farmers is so expensive, and the time they turn their actual farm into one of these, it's a process. It's 5, 10, 15 years before the soil is turned over. It's a process to get to a full actual organic farm. So that process is very expensive, and when you're trying to survive, it doesn't make sense, a lot of these farms to do that, right?
Right. And most people aren't willing to pay for that product, and so I think we definitely can do those. And once again, I'm going to try to go for more, organic when I can, and goat cheeses, whenever possible. And so I do like to go to the little health food store, and that's where I try to buy most of my items, because and they're going to have, and matter of fact, they've got, it's kind of like European. I mean, they have dozens and dozens of cheeses.
Let's talk about that. So I spent 3 weeks in Portugal this past summer, and when you would go to a grocery store, for one, everything's organic. There's no, when you go to Portugal and you go to, I'm sure other European countries are very similar. There's no, and shouldn't the whole grocery store be healthy? So there's literally 3 aisles of health food, and the rest, and half the health food is still processed crap that just says low this. And then the rest of the place, you're just wandering